Have you ever thought to yourself before going to sleep, tomorrow is the day I'm going to change. Tomorrow's the day I'll get up early in the morning, have a healthy breakfast, and go for a morning jog. Tomorrow's the day I'm going to be the best version of myself. Well, unfortunately, change doesn't come easy. You'll have to incorporate certain habits into your life that'll eventually lead to you becoming the best version of yourself. You'll also need to eliminate certain habits that are going to hinder you on your journey. We all develop bad habits, whether it's something small like biting your fingernails or an addiction like smoking or eating junk food. Bad habits can lead to long-term behaviors that are detrimental to our physical and mental well-being. But then we all know this, right? The tricky part is actually managing to quit. And if you've ever tried it yourself, you'll know that it can be a long and arduous process. But how long exactly? How long does it take to change your life? Well, the answer isn't as straightforward as some people might think. Now, a person may take the all-important first step in deciding to put an end to a bad habit, and that's a great start. However, it takes consistent effort and a lot of commitment to turn that positive thought into action. One popular myth states that it takes approximately 21 days to break an addiction. The key word in that sentence, mind you, is the word myth. You see, this mistaken belief has been proven by many psychologists to be inaccurate, as it could take far longer to break a habit depending on a number of factors, such as the habit itself, how long you've been doing it, and the effects that that habit has had on the human body. And yet, this myth persists. Now, we can actually trace the origins of this 21-day myth all the way back to the work of Dr. Maxwell Maltz, a man who worked as a plastic surgeon before becoming a psychologist. Oddly enough, he made the claim in his book about psycho-cybernetics in the 1960s, although he wasn't referring to habits per se. Instead, he was stating that patients who received cosmetic surgery took around 21 days to become accustomed to altering parts of their body. More specifically, Maltz suggested that patients required about 3 weeks to get used to different facial features following surgery, absence of a limb after amputation, or a house that they'd moved into. That last point is likely what led to Maltz's theory being applied to the act of breaking habits. However, Maltz relied heavily on patient reports rather than scientific evidence in his findings. What's more, the situations he described are examples of habituation, which is the process of becoming accustomed to something new, not habits. It's similar to breaking a bad habit, but not exactly the same. Getting used to a new limb or a new house isn't like trying to stop smoking or eat more healthily. Breaking a bad habit tends to involve more consistent, conscious effort, while habituation is about coping with something that's already been modified. For example, a smoker may take longer to quit because they keep suffering setbacks by buying more cigarettes. They'll likely think about it daily and need to make a conscious effort to change their behavior for the better. One bad day can cause a setback. On the other hand, someone who moves into a new house feels inclined to be positive and to get used to it as soon as possible. Their change is much more permanent. Since they can't exactly move house every single day, they're forced to adapt as soon as possible. All of this means that the 21-day myth is not applicable to most people who are looking to change their ways. So how about less of what's wrong and more about what's right? Dr. Joyce Corsica, a health psychologist at Rush University Medical Center, defines a habit as one or more behaviors repeated so often that it becomes automatic. Try to think of it as a mental shortcut in your brain formed through repetition, environmental cues, and reinforcement of good behavior. The good news is that even when something seems automatic, there's still a level of choice involved. You're the one who chooses to stock the fridge with unhealthy snacks and go downstairs for a midnight feast, even if it seems that your fridge has some kind of magnetic force that's drawing you in. You could choose to buy healthy foods and eat at set intervals throughout the day, but instead you don't because you've gotten so used to it. Some experts prefer to use the terms helpful and not helpful habits rather than good or bad, claiming it helps to shift negative perspectives. I like to think about habits that are consistent with my goals and values versus those that aren't. That way, it seems like more of a logical adjustment rather than a radical change in anything I'm doing. If I'm unsure whether I should give up something, I think about how the action contributes to problems in my life and how it impacts my behavior, health, work, and relationships. Corsica says that many of us have habits that contribute to our difficulties, and in these instances, it's worth the time and the effort to break those habits. Now, of course, there are different levels of behavior, and an addiction like smoking is generally seen as much harder to kick than a less bad habit such as biting our nails. An article published in the British Medical Journal on smoking addiction reviewed the number of attempts it took people to stop smoking. When the researchers defined the definition of successful smoking cessation as 1 year of being smoke-free, the previous estimates of smokers needing 7 attempts to quit jumped up to 30. There's a strong relationship between the cycle of addiction and the subconscious pattern of habit. An article published in Time magazine provided scientific evidence that it takes around 90 days for the brain to reset itself and shake off the immediate influence of a drug. The research was performed by students at Yale University who found that after 90 days going cold turkey, an addict's decision-making and analytical functions in the brain's prefrontal cortex began to re-engage. This is probably why addicts who are are booked into long-term rehab treatments lasting 3 months or more have a much higher success rate than those who undergo rehab in short-term rehab settings. The 90-day period seems to be enough time for a person's brain to reset so that they can enter recovery and turn new patterns of behavior into positive habits. That being said, addiction remains a lifelong battle for many people, even after they've seemingly recovered for good. To break a habit once and for all, you not only need to change your behavior, you also need to consider the rewards you might have been getting from a certain habit and how you can replace them. These could be social rewards, physical or emotional ones. For instance, when I was in medical school, most students would go out binge drinking regularly, probably because everyone was a little bit socially awkward and it gave us all the rewards of confidence and social interaction. Without drinking, you may feel insecure and have fewer opportunities to meet people, and if that happens, you'll be more likely to go back to it the next weekend. As we all get a little bit older, you realize you don't necessarily need to binge alcohol to enjoy a night out, and the hangover the following day is probably not worth it unless it's a really great party. But giving up drinking altogether can be really challenging, as it's such a social habit. If you want to make a lasting behavior change, kick bad habits, and adopt good ones, James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, points out that old habits return when there's nothing to sustain you beyond the achievement of your original goal. Instead of focusing on the final outcome or goal you want to achieve, which may seem far off, it's way better to spend time creating an effective system that allows you to make progress towards your goal. Goals tell you where you want to go, and systems show you how to get there. For example, if you want to lose weight and you set yourself a goal of losing 20 pounds, there are a number of ways that you can go about this. However, you may revert to old habits after hitting that 20-pound goal because you didn't create an effective system that helps you with your weight management that can be stuck with consistently. People with a goals-first mindset put off their happiness for a future time. I might say I'm going to restrict my food for 6 weeks to lose weight, for example. With a systems-first mentality, you enjoy every step that leads up to that goal, and this might be saying something like, I'm going to enjoy eating healthy foods which I prep every weekend. When you enjoy doing what you're doing, you're more likely to repeat it. It takes time to build a new habit or break a bad one, and that's why most people quit halfway. The San Antonio Spurs, one of the most successful teams in NBA history, have a famous quote from social reformer Jacob Rills hanging in their locker room. That quote says, "When nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stonecutter hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet at the 101st blow, it will split in two. And I know that it wasn't that last blow that did it, but all that had gone before." This is why there's no such thing as an overnight success. We often see people in the media celebrated for success only after they've been working away for 10 years in quiet anonymity. Our habits are all based in human psychology, and they center around a 4-stage procedure. Something triggers a craving, we perform a response, and then we get a reward. This is how advertising works too. We see some tasty food on social media, we want that food, we then make a decision to either get it for the reward of eating that food, or we use our willpower to delay our gratification. To make us crave the food, the ad has to pop up on our newsfeed in the first place, and it has to be attractive to us, so maybe it's our favorite burger. Then, once we're craving that food, it has to be easy for us to get. For example, if we already have the food, or it's available on Uber Eats, that's way easier than having to go out and buy it ourselves. And then we've got to believe that food will satisfy us. We can reverse these behavior change principles too to break bad habits. We need to make the bad habits unattractive and ideally invisible to us altogether. An example of this is banning cigarette advertising so that their existence isn't obvious, and then they're made unattractive by increasing their price and showing the effects of lung cancer on packets of cigarettes. We then also want to make bad habits difficult to perform and unrewarding. An example here is I'll usually put my phone in another room when I'm working, so I have to actually get up from my desk to go and get it, which is way harder than just pulling it out of my pocket. All of this is an example of your environment either helping you or hindering you when it comes to making lasting behavior change. Hawkins Stern, an economist in the 1950s, found that seeing a product for the first time can make shoppers create a need in their minds for that product. He called the phenomenon suggestion impulse buying. If you really want to kick a habit or create a new one, you need to change up your environment. If you want to eat healthily, surround yourself with people who do the same. Get all that junk food out of your house and make sure your life and job allow you to get enough sleep and spend time preparing healthy food. If not, as hard as it is, you may need to change up your environment if you want to make a lasting change. And if you want to make a really big identity level change, you're going to need to make some pretty big life switches. When I went solo traveling, it completely changed my perspective on life, as for the first time I was out of my typical environment and culture, and my eyes were open to a wide range of possibilities. Equally, when I first signed up for CrossFit and surrounded myself with like-minded people, it took my fitness to the next level, and it was all because it was fun, social, and easy for me to access, and I then built a regular habit. If you're trying to break an unhelpful habit right now, stick with it, and I'm sure you'll conquer it eventually, no matter how long it takes. As Charlie Munger said, says, the first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. The days when you make the most progress, in my opinion, are the ones where you just show up. When you don't feel like going to the gym, or it's too wet or cold to go for a run outside, but you suck it up and do it anyway. Maybe the gym session or the run isn't your best, but because you've shown up, you're building that habit and facilitating that compounding effect. Now, I hope you found this video really useful. I've added in a really fun video I put together on habit trackers to help you build consistent habits, which I'll pop up in the end cards. And do remember to drop a like and consider subscribing for more videos like this. That's all for now. Stay positive, stay consistent, and I'll catch you again in the next one.